All right, Tabosai, good morning. Let's begin. Today's daf is Kuf. First of all, Guten Chodesh. Today's daf is Kuf 100. We are picking up on the last line of Tzadik Tes on Beis 99b. Our shira this morning is dedicated by Michael and Rachel Turniansky for the yahrzeit of Michael's brother Alan Turniansky, Avram Yitzchak ben Shimon Yaakov. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah and the Shem will have an aliyah and the family in a chama. Thank you. Also, with that, let's begin. So the Gemara, we left off yesterday with literally bottom line. Gid hanoshesh and his bashal. So if you remember again, so the Mishnah said that if you cook a gid, right, a gid hanosha, with other gidin, with other kosher sinews, so what's the halacha? We look again to see if there's nesinas tam. Does the gid hanosha infuse taste or not into the other gidin? If it does, the mixture is treif. If it does not, the mixture is kosher. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. Vili batal beruba. Why don't we just say the gid hanosha is batal berov in the rest of the mixture? But so we're going to be introduced to a number of incredibly important ideas today, to which the Gemara says birya shiny. Which the Gemara introduces us to the concept of beria. We've actually seen this before. We spoke about this a few days ago when we did the Mishnah. Beria Abosai means that even if something is small, but it is a fully intact entity, then halacha l'maisa is chashuv, and if it's chashuv, it's not batal. So remember again, the paradigmatic case of this that we spoke about before was the ant. Excellent. Again, so the ant obviously very small, but nevertheless, halacha l'maisa, because it is a beria, therefore again it is chashuv. The Gemara suggests over here that even if the gid does not have a kizayis, because it is an entity, a complete entity unto itself, therefore it is not batal. So we're going to see this theme throughout the daf today about things which, although normally, again, the importance of something in terms of ta'arovis, in terms of mixture, is in terms of its size, we're going to see that if something is considered to be a davar hachashuv, something important for some other reason, then halacha l'maisa, again, halacha l'maisa, it does not become batal. So says the Gemara, v'chein chaticha shel nevela, both the top of kuf. So to again, remember again, what was the case of chaticha shel nevela? So the Mishnah said that if you have a piece of nevela that gets mixed in with other kosher pieces of meat. So what's the halacha? Bizman shemakirin benosein tam. If you recognize the treif piece, pull it out, throw it out. Then I will say, then again, we only have an issue of tam, which means you just have to measure the taste infusion. On the other hand, if not, then ultimately again everything will be asur. So let's analyze this. So what we're saying is like this. If you don't know, if you recognize, so I'm cooking a pot of meat, a piece of nevela falls in. If I recognize the nevela piece of meat, so then what's the remedy? Step 1, remove it. Step 2, measure taste infusion. Right? So step 1, remove it. Step 2, measure taste infusion. If there's whatever it is, we'll call it 60 times more kosher meat than non-kosher meat, then ultimately again we'll be okay. However, what if I don't recognize the piece of nevela? I don't recognize it. So we'll say, then what's the halacha? What's the halacha? The Mishnah says, everything is asur. Says, I don't understand. Viti bata baruba. Why is everything asur? Well, so I'm clearly dealing with a case where there's an overwhelming majority of kosher meat corresponding to the non-kosher meat. If that's the case, then ultimately, again, why should the rest of the mixture be asur? To which the Gemara says, here we go. So we'll say, we're going to see this machlokes a couple of times in the next few dapim, which is kol shedar kol limnos os shedar kol limnos. So we'll say, here's what we know. We know that halacha l'maisa, things are often counted or sold in different ways. Some things are always sold as groups. Some things are always sold as individual units. Anything that is sold as an individual unit has a chashivos, has an importance to it. That chashivos will then prevent it ultimately again from becoming batal in a mixture. This is the common theme we see. If something is chashiv, it's not batal in a mixture. If something is always counted as separate units, that shows its chashivos, therefore it is not batal in a mixture. So some things are always sold in a group, some things are always sold or counted individually. Then you have a middle category, which is Sometimes they're counted or sold individually, and sometimes they're not. So I'll say, now watch this. So let's just understand what we're trying to do. We have a Mishnah that tells me that if I have a piece of nevela which gets mixed in with kosher meat, and I can't identify which is the nevela, which is not, what's the halacha? The entire mixture is aser. So asks the Gemara, but I don't understand. Why isn't it just batal barof? Right? Or even want to say rov, batal b'shishim, something. Yet again, the Mishnah says the entire mixture is aser. So I'll say, now watch this. Says the Gemara, Hani chalaman amar kol shedarko limno shaninu. So we'll say, if you hold, like Rashi, kol shedarko limno shaninu, the meseches arla, gabe chavile tilson delo batal, hanami pamim shenimnis adam asoy limnos chatichav, chatichosav, this is the minyan archim shazimi. So let's listen to this. Kol shedarko limnos means anything that is sometimes counted. Anything that is sometimes counted. Not always counted, sometimes counted. So we'll say, according to the opinion who says that even something that is only sometimes counted is considered to be a davar chashuv and therefore not batal, I understand this case in the Mishnah. Therefore, again, you have a piece of nevela. Piece of nevela is sometimes counted. It is sometimes counted. And therefore what? And therefore, halacha lemaisa, it will not be batal in this mixture. But I will say, if you go according to the opinion of es shedarko, so es shedarko limnos means, look at Rashi, the miyuchad leminyanhu the lo batal. So I'll say es shedarko limnos means something which is exclusively counted. It is always counted. It is always reckoned as a separate individual entity, never as part of a group. So both say that, therefore, how do I understand the Mishnah? Why would it be that halacha l'maisa, if the piece of nevela falls into the mixture, ultimately, again, it should be batal? To which the Gemara will say, here we go, shiny chaticha hoil v'ru'uya lehiskabita lifnei ha'archim. Wow. So we'll say, here we go. To which the Gemara says, this case of the Gemara is different. This is the case of Mishnah. This is what we call a chaticha haru'uya lehiskabita. Chaticha haru'uya lehiskabita means a piece of meat that is a significant piece. A significant piece, something that is what we call chaticha lehiskabita, literally means an honorific piece, right? A piece, a chashiv, a piece. So when you have a chashiv piece, that is not batal. Literally, again, it's the type of meat that is so chashiv that you would give it to a guest, right? You would give it to a guest. Such a piece of meat has a chashivos and therefore is not batal. And I will say, this indeed is halacha l'maisa. So Shulchan Aruch Paskins in Hilchos Taroves in Siman Kuf Aleph Sif Aleph, chaticha haru'uya liskabed dina keberia da'afilu be'elef lo batal. So also, it's actually quite amazing. So if you have, now what's the definition of a chashiv, a piece of meat? You know, what defines the most? So again, the idea is, this is subjective, because obviously it depends on your station, I guess your financial status, what you normally serve. But if you have a piece of meat that is a chashiv cut of meat that you would normally give before archim, and it's aser, let's say, it's treif, and it gets mixed in with other pieces of meat, the Shulchan Aruch Paskins, that has the din of a beria, right? Just like a beria is not batal be'elef, so to a chaticha ru'uya liskabed will not be batal be'elef as well. So we'll say, so we begin to see as our list grows of items which have an incredible level of chashivas, level of importance, and as a result, therefore, are never batal in a mixture. Incredible. We go back to utzricha. So we'll say, so now the shaila is, why don't I need both the case of the gid and the case of the chaticha ru'uya liskabed? In other words, both are teaching me the same concept, which is that when something is chashuv, it is not batal in a mixture. So why do I need both cases? Here we go. Diashmoinon gid mishum de beriyahi. If it would have just told me the case of gid, I would have said gid is not batal. Why? Because it's a beria, because it's a fully contained entity. Aval chaticha imalo. That was with the chaticha, piece of meat, as chashuv as it might be, nevertheless, again, it's not a beria, and therefore halacha l'maisa, again, it should be batal. To which the Gemara says, therefore, again, tzricha. I'm sorry, on the other hand, I would have said, why is the chaticha not batal? Because again, it is roi, it is fit to be served to guests. Because of that, it has a chashivus, and that's why it's not batal. However, aval gid imalo. but by gid Rabosei, which again is not chashiv to be served before archim. Especially remember again, how did we end yesterday's sugya? How do we end? Ein begidin b'no seintam, right? There is no taste in gidin, no taste in gidin. Therefore, again, I would have said that halacha l'maisa should be batal. Therefore, again, tzricha. Therefore, say halacha l'maisa, I need both of these cases, both gid as well as chaticha haruya l'skabed ba. They're both saying now. Interestingly enough, the Shulchan Aruch kind of equates the two. That both so gid anash and chaticha haruya l'skabed ba will both be treated like a beria. And I both say, what's the halacha with the beria? A beria is not batal. Why is it not batal? Ultimately, again, because it is considered a self-contained entity. Therefore, it is chashuv. Because it is chashuv, it is not batal in a mixture. Incredible. We'll say go weiter. Darash Ra Babrachana. So we'll say, so again, just to understand the beauty of this sugya is literally again, this is halacha l'maisa after halacha l'maisa. Darash Ra Babrachana. So Babrachana introduced another concept. Chaticha shel nevela v'shal dag tamei eino oseres achetitin tam berotov ubekifa bechaticha. So we'll say, here we go. If you have a piece of nevela or a piece of a non-kosher fish, so we'll say, so ultimately again, when do these items aser in a mixture? Only when there's enough of them to infuse taste into everything. Most we actually saw this in yesterday's daf. Only when there's enough of a concentration of these items to infuse taste into everything, into the gravy, the kippah, we'll say, is like the sediment, the food sediment on the bottom of the pot, and the chatichos, and the other pieces of meat or fish as well. So fine. So we'll say, Uki Rav Amora Alev. So we'll say, Rav went ahead and summoned his Amora, right? The guy who went ahead and interpreted his rulings. V'darash, and he darshaned as follows. Kevan shenasan tam bechaticha, chaticha atzma naasis nevela, v'oseres kala chatichos kulon mipnei shemina. Wow. So Bose comes along Rav, and Rav introduces to us a bombshell concept. The concept of what we call chanan. Chanan. Chaticha naasis nevela. So we'll say, so this, by the way, is a dramatic idea, which is, let me frame this to you in the following situation. We'll say just a simple case. A simple case. Well, not so simple. I was going to use basar b'chalav, but we'll illustrate basar b'chalav, but then you'll forget that it's basar b'chalav for all of the cases. Watch this. A drop of milk falls onto meat. Milk falls onto meat. So let's say it's enough milk. That's not b'shishim. A lot of milk falls onto the meat. The meat absorbs the milk. What's the status of the meat? It's aser. We'll say, now when we say the meat is aser, what we have to ask ourselves is a fundamental yisodistic shaila, which is, when that meat is aser, what's aser about it? Is the iser the amount of milk that is absorbed inside of the meat? Or is it the piece of meat in totality which becomes aser? Rabbi say, you hear that distinction? What's aser? Do we say that 73% of this meat is aser because again that's the amount of milk that was absorbed? Or no, the milk absorption transforms the entire piece of meat into a chefza shal iser. So Rabbi say, so you say to yourself, who cares? So I'll tell you why it matters. Let's say that piece of meat falls into another mixture, a pot of kosher meat. So we'll say, so obviously, what do I need? I need shishim. Shishim against what? Do I need shishim against the entire piece of meat that fell in, or just shishim against the absorption of the milk in the first piece of meat? So we'll say, so Rav is suggesting over here the concept of chaticha naasis nevela. When a piece of meat, or for that matter, a piece of fish, it's not unique to meat. When a piece of food, right, absorbs a prohibited absorption, the halacha is that absorption transforms the entire item, the entire piece, into a chefza shel iser. That's chaticha naasis nevela. Chanan, for short. The entire piece of meat becomes prohibited by dint of the absorption. That's what Rav is saying. Incredible. Kevan shenasan tam bechaticha. Once the prohibited item infused flavor into the piece of kosher food, therefore, what will say naasis nevela chaticha atzma naasis nevela. The piece of the form of the kosher piece becomes now like a piece of nevela. Va'oseres kol hachatichos, and I will say then in turn goes ahead and asers everything else in the pot. Why? Mipnei shehein mina. Ultimately, again, because it is a min b'mina. Now look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, "O saras kala chatichos kol mipnei shemina, v'chasaka daytchom mipnei shemina lo batli, v'afilu yeshban kedei bitol shtein." And I will say, now Rav is also waiting in on a different topic, which is the status of a min b'mino mixture. So Rav is really saying two things over here. Number one, min b'mino lo batal. Right, which we'll say we're going to discuss this in greater depth. Min b'mino lo batal. That's number one. Number two, what he's saying is chanan chaticha nasis nevela. So we'll say if you put this all together, then what happens? If you have a piece of nevela which falls into a pot of kosher meat, then I will say what happens? What happens? Assuming that there's not enough initially to go to mevatel in nevela. And I will say, now this case, the easiest way to illustrate this case, I will say would be what? Would be you have one piece of kosher meat that is sticking up from the pot. You have a piece of nevela that lands on top of that piece of kosher meat. There's not enough in the kosher meat to be mavatal the nevela meat. So we'll say what happens? Let's go through the mechanics. What happens? Step one. The piece of meat, right? The kosher piece of meat becomes usser. Rav says what becomes usser? What becomes usser? The entire piece of meat. Chaticha nasis nevela. So we'll say now what I have is, now I have a piece of nevela meat that's sitting in the pot with the rest of the kosher meat. Rav posits min b'mino eno batal, like mixtures cannot be mavatal one another, and therefore what? The entire pot of meat becomes aser. So here we go. Amrli Rav Safra l'Abaye. So Rav Safra said to Abaye, Michti, Rav Kiman Amra l'Shmaite. Who is Rav saying his? Who is Rav paskening like? Rabbi Yehuda the Amar min b'mino lo batal. So we'll say first of all. So I want to just divide two things. We'll say Rav is bringing together two concepts, which is chanan and min b'mino lo batal. Those two items are not necessarily linked. We're going to see that you could hold of chaticha nasis nevela and hold that min b'mino batal. You can. Rav happens to be grouping these two things together. So Rav Sarfa says to Abaye, tell me, who is Rav holding like? Rav is holding like Rabbi Yehuda, who holds min b'mino lo batal. The Rabbi will say, like mixtures are not batal in one another. So if that's the case, my area ki nasan tam, afilu kilo nasan tam nami. So Rabbi will say, so says Rav Safra to Abaye, I don't understand. If you're min b'mino lo batal, Rabbi will say, min b'mino lo batal is not a din in tam. It's a din in what? That apparently when you have like mixtures, they have an inability to be mavatal each other. So if that's the case, why do you have to get into chaticha nasis nevela over here? This is a simple case. Once you have a piece of nevela that falls into a pot of kosher food, I'll say, what's the halacha? What's the halacha? We're done. That's it. Independent of chaticha nasis nevela, chatichas not nasis nevela, doesn't make a difference. Once you hold min b'mino eno batal, then I'll say, once you have any amount of kosher, of non-kosher food that falls into a pot of kosher food, conversation is over. Amalei. Hachamaskinon, what's the case? No. Bishakidin bisalko. Both say the case over here is where the kosher piece of meat ultimately, the non-kosher piece of meat, fell into the pot, but was then immediately, subsequently removed. Take a look at Rashi. Bishakidin bisalko. Li'isser v'silek rotav kodim shitin acheros pikdera. Hilchach nosna tam berishona harezu chozeres v'osarton. So also listen to this. What's the case here? The case we'll say is as I actually framed it for you before in the illustration. You have a pot of meat, one piece of kosher meat extends above the other. The nevela piece of meat falls on top of that kosher meat. The nevela never comes in contact with anything other than what? That one piece of raised meat. It doesn't come in contact with the gravy, with the sediment, with the pot, nothing. Just a piece of raised meat. And I will say what happens? Right after contact, what occurs? The piece of non-kosher meat is removed. It's removed. So I will say, what do I have over here? This is only a case of what? Tam. Only a case of tam. Now it begins to come together. So I will say, if it's only a case of tam, then what? Then halacha l'maisa, now everything begins to come together. This is not really initially a case of min b'mino batal, because at first I will say this is just the case of nevela infusion. So I will say, but now, so step one, so nevela falls on top of the piece of kosher meat. There's a nevela infusion. Chaticha nasis nevela. Therefore, what? That piece of kosher meat becomes non-kosher meat in totality. Now that piece of kosher, that piece of meat, formerly known as kosher, now becomes an entire cheftza of nevela. Now it's mixed in with the rest of the pot, and now you have a situation of min b'mino. Rav holds like Rabbi Hudo's min b'mino ain't no bottle, and therefore the entire pot will be bottle. Incredible. Rava on the other hand says, we'll say Amud Beis. Rava Amar, afilu tema lo kidim v'silko. Rava says the truth is, even if you did not go ahead and what? Even if you did not go ahead and remove the nevela immediately, the case still works, and I'll tell you why. Have min umino v'davar acher. So this is actually quite interesting. He holds that lamais again. They will say this would be we've not seen this before, and we're going to see it. You know, the Mizrah points out this comes on Kuf Ches. So another week or so. We'll say the concept of min umino v'davar acher. So we'll say up until now we've always been looking at our mixtures as being one of two ways, either mino, like items, or min b'she'eno mino, dissimilar items. There's a third category of min umino v'davar acher, a mixture between two like items and something dissimilar. Now, both say you should understand this is actually the case that happens quite often. The easiest example of this would be what? You're making a stew. The stew has kosher meat. Non-kosher meat falls in. So both say, so what's that a case of? On one hand, it's min b'mino, because I have kosher meat, non-kosher meat. On the other hand, I have potatoes, I have other stuff in there, that's she'eno mino. So I have min b'mino v'davar acher. I have like items, but I also have something dissimilar in the mixture. So watch this. So here we go. So we'll say, by the way, so what do you do? This is actually quite interesting and riveting. What do you do in a case of min umino v'davar acher? So don't worry, we're going to spend some significant time on this, right? We're going to focus on it and try to figure out what to do with it. But also, we have to understand you have two competing challenges here. On one hand, again, you have mino, which is according to Rabbi Yehuda is what? Sas mino, not bottle. I have min b'she'eno mino, which is bottle. How much? Is it rov? Is it shishim? Is it mea? Okay, so that's subject to machlokes, but at least I know it is bottle. So how do I deal with this mixture? So I'll say this is wild. Get ready for this. V'chol min, second line, kuf amud beis. V'chol min umino v'davar acher. And I will say, anytime you have a mixture of min umino v'davar acher, similar items and dissimilar items, get ready. So I'll say, silek es mino kimi she'eno, v'she'en mino rabba alav umevatlo. So I'll say the halacha allows us to do this incredible thing, which is remove the mino and see if the she'eno mino can be mevatel it. So we'll say, well, essentially what we halachically allow you to do, not physically, but just halachically is what? I remove the similar items and see if the dissimilar items have enough of a ratio to be mevatel the asr items. So for example, in the case of the stew, so what would I do? I would view the kosher meat as if it's not there, and what? There's enough potatoes and carrots and onions and everything else to go ahead and be mevatel the tam ultimately of the non-kosher meat. So we'll say, so therefore again, understand, all we're doing over here, Rabbi is just trying to figure out a very, very specific case, right? Ultimately, again, of this chaticha shel nevela v'dag tamei ein oseres achetitein tam berota v'bekifa. So we'll say, so again, we have Rav telling us that we learn two things over here. Number one, min mimino ein batal. Number two, chaticha naasis nevela. All the Gemara is just giving over here is now alternate versions, ultimately, of this case, to be able to make it conform, even if you don't hold min b'mino bata. But I will say, what comes out from this, we learn out just from Amud Aleph 3 very important halachas. We'll say halacha number 1 is that Pidanasha is considered to be a beria, and therefore again a beria is not bottle in a mixture. Number 2, chaticha haruuya liskabe lifnei ha'orchim. If you have a piece of meat or a piece of fish or any item which is chashuv enough that you would serve it to company, or something very chashuv, that, says the Shulchan Aruch, has the din of a beria. It's chashuv, and therefore again not bottle in a mixture. Number 3, chaticha naasis nevela. The Rebbe say when something permitted absorbs flavor from something prohibited, it's not just the pshat that the permitted item is only usher in terms of the percentage of the absorption, but rather again the entire piece of that which was permitted is fundamentally transformed into a nevela. Now, Rebbe say I have to give you a very, very, very strong caveat on that halacha, because we're going to see. I'm not going to get into it now, but I'll get into it now for just a second. The Shulchan Aruch says that the concept of chanan, chaticha nasis nevela, is dafka adin by basar b'chalav. For Shulchan Aruch Paskins, this is again hilchos basar b'chalav, incredible. Lo amru chatichatz v'nasis nevela ella b'basar b'chalav avalo b'shar isurim. So also we're going to see, we accept this concept of chanan, but only by milk and meat mixtures, only by basar b'chalav, not by other prohibitions. So we'll say, so for example, just a very simple illustration, then we have to go weiter. So if you were to have a piece of meat that got mixed, kosher meat that got mixed together with nevela meat, and we'll say, let's say again, the nevela meat was, we'll call it 30% of the size, ultimately, again, of the kosher piece of meat. The kosher piece of meat obviously becomes usher. You can't eat it because it has an available absorption. But if that piece of meat were to fall into something else, you would not have to measure against the entire piece of kosher meat, but rather you'd only have to measure against the amount of the absorption. Now, we'll say practically how that plays out, we're going to discuss. But again, I'm giving you this only because the Gemara brought up Hanan here. I want to make sure you don't paskin the wrong way when if you're faced with any shilas today. So we'll say, so again, Hanan, the Shulchan Aruch paskins, is only a din by basar b'chalav, but not a din by other isurim. We're going to spend more time in chaticha nasis nevela, but at least you know in a panoramic view that's how we hold. We'll say weiter, says the Mishnah. Noi b'torah, we'll say back to Gid Hanasha. Noi b'torah ve'no noi b'tmeya. We'll say Gid Hanasha only applies to an animal, to a kosher animal, and does not apply to a non-kosher animal. Interesting halach. So we'll say, so therefore again what that means is, if you were to eat the gid, well, we'll say, take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Eino noi b'tmeya, shim achal Gid Hanasha shel tmeya, Leman damer yesh begid v'no sein tam lo ki mishum tamei v'la mishum gid leman damer in tam begid in pater miklum de b'torah eitzu v'atorah chayv ala batmei ein anoik. So we'll say what that means is as follows. So gid hanasha only applies to the gid of a kosher animal, not to a gid of a non-kosher animal. We'll say practically what that means is what happens if you eat the gid of a non-kosher animal. So it depends. So remember again, we saw the machlokes. We had it in yesterday's daf about yesh begid v'no sein tam or ein begid v'no sein tam. Right? Does the gid have a flavor? Does the gid not have a flavor? So if you hold that the gid has a flavor and you eat the gid of a non-kosher animal, so are you chayiv? Are you chayiv? Yes. For what? For consumption of non-kosher meat. Right? But you're not chayiv twice. You're chayiv once for consumption of non-kosher meat. You're not chayiv for consuming specifically gid hanasha. If you hold ein begid v'no sein tam and you eat the gid of a non-kosher animal, so we'll say, what's the halacha? You're pater. Eitz be'almahu. It's as if you took a bite out of a tree, and therefore, again, there's absolutely no chiyuv. Rabbi Huda disagrees, and he says, af bitmeya. Suppose Rabbi Huda disagrees, and he holds that the prohibition of gid hanasha applies even to a non-kosher animal. So we'll say, where does Rabbi Huda get this from? I'm Rabbi Huda. V'halom ibnei Yaakov nesar gid hanasha. So I'll tell you my proof. Already, again, when does gid hanasha become asr, Abosai? Gid hanasha becomes asr after Yaakov Avinu's fight with the mysterious Ish. Al kin lo yochlu b'nei Yisrael gid hanasha. So already we'll say earlier, by the times of Yaakov Avinu, va'adayin behemot tameh muteres lahem. And I will say we know during the times of Yaakov Avinu, right? They didn't have to eat kosher food. The Avos might have observed whatever they observed, but the Maisa, there was no obligation to go ahead and eat kosher food. And yet, what do you see? The prohibition of gid was still intact. The prohibition of gid was there. Therefore, what do you see? That the prohibition of gid applies even to a non-kosher animal. This is actually amazing. So the Tanakama says back to Rabbi Yehuda, no. B'Sinai ne'amar. The prohibition of gid hanasha was actually stated at Har Sinai, ela shenichtav bimkomo. So this is actually quite amazing. So the Tanakama says, no. The prohibition of gid hanasha was not given until Har Sinai. What happens is after Moshe Rabbeinu gave that halacha, the Torah Kadosh Baruch Hu went back and wrote the halacha by the narrative from which it is derived. But in fact, again, halacha l'maisa, the prohibition of gid did not actually apply until where? Until Matar Rabosai. This goes with a general concept espoused in the Yerushalmi of ein lemeidin davar mikodem matan Torah. We cannot learn binding halacha from anything which occurred before Sinaitic revelation. That's why I will say, for example, Bris Milah, which is originally taught by Avram Avinu, is restated in Parshas Tazria. Right? Why? It says about Avram Avinu, right? That Avram Avinu is all the children are going to have, because again, you can't learn binding halacha from anything before Matan Torah. So the Tanakama says, despite the fact that gid hanasha is mentioned over here by Yaakov Avinu, in fact, it wasn't given until Har Sinai, and was then just written in the context. Good. So we'll say, so again, very exciting, no? We'll say it's like, Do I have to juggle? What is it? What is it? Tell me what I need to do to get the excitement level up here. Abosai, again, understand. This is incredible. It's Rosh Chodesh, it's new beginning, it's Adar, Ein Simcha Ela Batorah. There's coffee, there's good people, there's a nice setting. This is Mein Olam Haba. Come on, get into it. So let's say, here we go. So now remember again, we have a fundamental machlokes, ultimately again, about Gid Hanosha. So does Gid Hanosha ultimately again apply to a kosher animal, non-kosher? So we'll say, obviously everyone agrees the prohibition of Gid Hanosha applies to Behemoth Kshera. Obviously it's going to apply to a kosher animal. What about Behemoth Tmeah? Tanakama saying no, Rabbi Huda saying yes. Rabbi Huda seemingly getting his proof ultimately from the fact that it's mentioned by Yaakovin. Good. I have to tell you something. You see a lot of Gemara like this, and mamash, you feel like you won the spiritual lottery. Because this is, sometimes you go through a piece of Gemara, and let's be honest, you finish the shir, and you're thinking to yourself, what just happened here, right? What just happened over here? I will say, so amazing if this is one of these pieces of Gemara where it's chock full of incredible yediyas. Halacha yediyas, watch this. So, Rabbi Yehuda, Isser Chalalis, 1 second. What just happened over here? Rabbi Yehuda is telling me that the Isra of Gid Hanasha applies to a non-kosher animal. We'll say, that we know what that means. That means Isser Chal al Isser. We'll say, we've spoken of this concept many, many times. If something is already Asr, is there the possibility for another layer of Isra to devolve upon an already existing Isra? So we'll say, what we're assuming is like this. A Behemoth Tameah is first a Behemoth Tameah. The Isra of Gid Hanasha subsequently devolves upon the animal. Rabbi Yehuda says, you're chayiv for going and eating the Gid Hanasha of a non-kosher animal, which must mean that what? Rabbi Yehuda holds Isra Chalal Isra, that one Isra could devolve upon another. Does he really hold that? But Tanya, we learned. Here we go. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yochel Tein Nevelas of Tamim Mitam Begadim Meisai Blia. So we know that the halacha is that if you go ahead and you ingest the nevela, you ingest a piece of nevela from a kosher animal. So there's an interesting halacha that occurs, which is that when you swallow, when that nevela is in your throat, it's mitame begadim abeis hablia. When the nevela is in your throat, when you're swallowing it, it conveys tumah to your clothing. I might have thought that this halacha applies to a nevela of a non-kosher bird as well. So we'll say, as stated in the Torah, the halacha applies to the nevela of a kosher animal. So a kosher animal dies without shechita, you go ahead and you eat that animal. Once that meat is in your throat, it conveys tumah to your clothing. I might have thought that halacha applies to a non-kosher bird as well. So the Gemara says, Talmud Lomar, nevela utrefa lo yochal. Therefore we'll say the pasuk says, ultimately, again, you may not eat an avela or a treifa. You may not eat it. L'tama ba, to become tame. Watch this. Mishe isuro mishum bal tochal nevela. And we'll say, when does an avela convey tuma? Only when the prohibition is because it's now an avela. Yatzazeh she'ein isuro mishum bal tochal nevela ela mishum bal tocha taneya. Ultimately, what does this exclude? This term comes to exclude ultimately again an animal that was already usher alts tmeya. We'll say if the animal was already usher to me alts tmeya, so ultimately again it does not get the additional status of nevela. Because it doesn't get the additional status of nevela, therefore what? If I eat it, I'll be chayiv ultimately for consuming non-kosher food. But what? It is not mitame my clothing. So we'll say, what do you see from here? Apparently you see from here that halacha lamaisa, once something has a prohibited status, you can't add on additional layers of prohibition to that item. So we'll say, again, this is the example. So if an animal is kshera and it dies without shechita, it can become an avela. And therefore, when I ingest it, it makes my clothing tameh. On the other hand, if the animal was already a tameya, it cannot subsequently become an avela. Just basing it on the pasuk. So we'll say the Gemara is taking out from there of ein isser chal al isser. Says the Gemara, v'chite makas savar ein begidin b'no sein tam. So maybe you'll say that what? In begidin b'no sein tam, which I will say ultimately means maybe a gid itself, maybe Rabbi Huda holds that the gid doesn't have any kind of flavor. In begidin b'no sein tam, and therefore again I will say what? Because it has no sein tam, therefore again ubitmeya nami isser gid ika isser tmeya leka. And I will say now watch this. The prohibition of consuming a non-kosher animal is only when there's a din of achila. In order to be a din of achila, you have to have the din of basar. If you're not considered basar, it's not asr alts achilas behema tmeya. So maybe Rabbi Yehuda holds that halacha lamaisa, ein begid beno sein tam. A gid has no flavor. Therefore, what Rabbi say? If you eat the gid of a non-kosher animal, I am not chayiv for eating behema tmeya because it's not considered to be like meat. What will I be chayiv for? Just the isser of gid. Maybe that's Rabbi Yehuda's shita, that there's not two issurim. We're assuming that according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's two isurim. Maybe there's not two isurim, there's just one isser of gid hanosha. For some Rabbi Yehuda, but is that true? That Rabbi Yehuda holds that a gid does not have flavor? Vatanya, we learned, ha'ochel gid hanosha shel behema tameya. If a person eats the gid hanosha of a non-kosher animal, Rabbi Yehuda mechayev shtayim. All right, we just blew that out of the water, right? Rabbi Yehuda says that if you eat the gid of a non-kosher animal, it's supposed to be explicit. He says what? You're chayiv 2 sets of malchus. Now, I said presumably why 2 sets of malchus? One for what? One for behema tameya and one for gid hanosha. So clearly, Rabbi Yehuda holds yesh begidin beno sein tam, that the gid itself must have a flavor, because if it didn't, you wouldn't be chayiv for tameya, behema tameya. Rabbi Shimon poter, but Rabbi Shimon ultimately says that's your poter. To which the Gemara says, the olam supposed to say, so what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Here we go. Lo olam kasava yesh begin beno sein tam. Oh, here we go. So what Rabbi say, you're right. Rabbi Yehuda holds a gid has a flavor. When you eat the gid, you'll be chayiv, right? Furthermore, what does he hold? The kasavar noeg b'shalil. We'll say he also holds that the prohibition of gid hanosha even applies to the animal in utero. Even when the baby is in utero, ultimately, again, there's a prohibition of gid hanosha. Now watch this. The isser gid, the isser tuma, bahadi hadadi kaasi. So we'll say, now watch this. When do we say ein isser chal al isser? When do we say ein isser chal al isser? When? We'll say when one comes first and one comes second. So if Isser 1 already devolved upon, right, Isser A already devolved upon the entity, so that would prevent Isser B from devolving upon that same entity. However, Rabbi Yehuda will hold, when there is simultaneity allows for both Isurim to devolve upon the item at the same time. Therefore, again, Rabbi Yehuda posits, the Isser of Gid Hanosha applies to the baby in utero. He holds that the Isser of Gid and the Isser of Tumah, Bahadi Hadadi Ka'asi, devolve upon the fetus at the same time. Therefore, both Isurim simultaneously devolve upon the fetus, and therefore, again, the Behema Tmeya will be Asr As Behema Tmeya and Gid Hanosha. Umi Matzis Amrit Noy B'Shal. Is that true? Is that true? So as we're going to see, the Gemara seems to be asking, is that true that Rabbi Yehuda holds that halacha l'maisa, the prohibition of gid applies to the fetus? Now we learned noeg b'shalil, right? So we'll say Tanakama holds that the iser applies to a shal. Rabbi Yehuda omer eino noeg b'shalil. So we'll say Rabbi Yehuda seems to say quite explicitly that the prohibition of gid anasha does not apply to the fetus. Furthermore, again, v'chel bo mutter. And furthermore, again, Rabbi Yehuda holds not only is there no prohibition of gid anasha, but there's also no iser of chelev for a fetus. To which the Gemara says, no. Hani mili gabe tehora. Both Rabbi Yehuda holds that there's no prohibition of gid hanosha and chelev for an animal in utero. That's by a kosher animal. D'Rachmana Omar kol ba behema tochelu. Because also remember we had this drasha. The pasuk says that while the animal is in utero, the animal in its entirety is permitted. Everything about that animal in utero is permitted. Even the gid hanosha, even the chelev. Aval b'tmeya noeg. But also ultimately for a non-kosher animal, when it's in utero, then Allah Chamayis Rabbi Yehuda will agree that the chelev will be asr, the gid hanosha will be asr. But says the Gemara, but I don't understand, is that true? That both the Isser of Behema Tmeya and the Isser of Gid devolve simultaneously upon the animal. We're talking about in utero now. Is that true? Vatnan, here we go. We learned Al Elu Tumos Hanazir Megalech. Remember again, if a Nazir is exposed to Tumah, then I will say, what's the halacha? The halacha is that he has to shave, right? He does the full hair cutting, right? And what? He has to start all over again. So what are the types of tumah for which a nazir ultimately, again, will have to go ahead and shave and do the haircut? Ala meis, da kizayis hameis. I will say for a corpse, right? And for a kizayis from a corpse. V'kashilan. I don't understand that. If you're going to tell me that the Nazir has to go ahead and shave if he becomes exposed to a kezayis min ha-meis, then what? It's only for a mace in its entirety. Rabbi Yochanan says, no. Lo nitzrucha ella lenefel shalonis kashru evarav begidin. What are we talking about? We're talking about when the fetus is in utero and the flesh has begun to form, but the sinews are not there. Which tells you what? Tells you that halacha lamaisa, there is something that exists of the vlad even before the gidin are present. So we'll say what that tells you for our purposes is, it has the status, now this is obviously talking about by a human being, right? But it's telling us that there is the status of a vlad, of an entity, a flesh, even before the sinews are there. Alma, Isser Tuma Kadim, Afagav. So we'll say, therefore, again, what do you see from here? So we would assume that by an animal as well, that there's some semblance of some animal, of a behemoth tmeah, before there are sinews, which tells me that what? That halacha l'maisa, there's not simultaneity. The isser of behemoth tmeah occurs what? Before the isser of gid. So how could Rabbi Yehuda say that they simultaneously devolve upon the animal in utero? To which the Gemara says, Afagav the isser tumakadim. You're right. Says the Gemara, the isser of behemoth tmeah comes first. But nevertheless, Asi Isser Gid Chayil Alei. We saw this before. But say the truth is, Rabbi Yehuda holds like this: Isser Behemoth Tmeah comes first. The Isser of Gid comes second. Ein Isser Chal Al Isser. So how could the animal become Asr Alzin Isser Gid if what Rabbi say? How could the Gid Anasha if it's already Asr Al Behemoth Tmeah? We'll say because it's what's called, because the second Isser that comes, i.e. the Isser of Gid, is we'll say what we call for our purposes like an Isser Mosif. It's more expansive than the first. When it's a behemoth tmeah, so we'll say, who is it answer to? Who is it answer to? Jews. A Gentile is permitted to eat a behemoth tmeah. On the other hand, when you have the Isra of Gid, Rabbi say the Isra of Gid is more expansive than the Isra of behemoth tmeah. Why? Because at least according to Rabbi Yehuda, shekein isuro noheg b'bnei noach. So also remember again, we've made reference to this machlokes before. And we're going to see it later on, actually, on Shabbos' daf. We'll say that what? That the Isra of Gid, there is an opinion that holds the Isra of Gid Anosh is not just for Jews. It applies to Gentiles as well. Therefore, in Rabbi Yehuda's Mano Rabosai, the Isra of Gid is a more expansive Isra than the Isra Behemoth Tmeah. Therefore, even though the Isra Behemoth Tmeah occurs first, the Isra of Gid will still devolve upon the animal because it is a more expansive Isra. And that is why Rabbi Yehuda holds that halacha l'maisa, if you eat the Gid Hanash of a Behemoth Tmeah, but say you get what? 2 sets of malchus. First set of malchus ultimately again for consuming behemoth tmeah. Second set of malchus ultimately again for consuming gid hanasha. Ein iser chalal iser. That's true when there are 2 isurim of the same caliber. But when one iser abosa is more expansive than the next, the second iser has the ability to devolve upon the first. Gid hanasha more expansive than the iser behemoth tmeah. So we'll stop over here. We'll pick up in Meretz Hashem bottom of Kuf in Meretz tomorrow. Just a reminder again, tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh as well. We begin the daf in Meretz Hashem 5:45.